So, good morning, class. Nice to see you guys all back for another lesson. So, now that we've covered everything we need until Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 come out in a few days now, which is very, very scary, I thought let's talk about some more specific stuff about Deltarune before we get there. So, we get, cast our stones in the water, see what ends up happening in the next chapters. And I feel like there's no better enigma to talk about regarding Deltarune stuff than Kris himself. Who is this kid? I have compiled some information talking about Kris. My findings on Kris Dreemurr. I think I told you guys about this before, but I saw someone say that they thought Chris's middle name should be Togor because it's the other way to mix Azrael and Toriel. Azor and Toriel's names. So yeah, Kris Deltarune Dreemurr. Also, I just want to put right here, do you guys know what this is?
Nope.
This is the test sprite for Kris. So that's very funny.
If you really just says like, no, the middle name's Togor, if you guys didn't know, I would have believed you 100%. Oh, I guess it's Togor. I missed something.
All right, so, oh yeah, before we get into Kris talk, actually, here's our representative comment for today from Big Sean 74. So this is a comment on the recent short that me and him put out. Thank you guys for all your nice comments about his Balatro play.
Yo, I'm trying to get gold state.
So this person left a comment regarding it, pointing out something super important, which they mentioned that Ralsei in their rocker outfit doesn't have a shirt, which means that in chapter 3 they're losing another pair of clothing, which is more evidence towards naked Ralsei theory. So that's awesome.
It all comes full circle. I think you told me.
Oh, did I not explain it on the video?
No,
yeah, I think you told me in like a Discord call.
Okay,
we were talking about that.
So Josh and whoever audience is confused. So naked Ralsei theory is a theory where at the end of chapter 1, they take off their hat. It's like, oh, it looks like this kid, right? So they take off a piece of clothing. And then in chapter 2, when you're going to do the Spampton stuff, and Susie and Ralsei are left on their own, Susie takes Ralsei's glasses. So that's another piece of clothing that Ralsei lost. So the theory is that each chapter, he's going to progressively lose more and more clothing until by chapter 7 he's completely naked. That's naked Ralsei theory.
So it's got the gut out.
He's going to turn into like...
Yeah, he does have the gut out. I just want to mention, I remember saying it when we first saw these designs in like sprite form in the trailer. And I said that his fit was absolutely abhorrent, and I think this is further proof of my point. What is he wearing, bro?
I think if he loses the mohawk, he can make it work.
Yeah, I think it at least doesn't have the glasses on, which I feel like glasses plus mohawk does not work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want a big thank you to Big Sean for pointing out that naked Ralsei theory has more legs to stand on. So that's better than some theories out there. But yeah, thank you for the comment. And if you're enjoying the video and you feel inclined to, you can go leave a comment. We would very much appreciate it. Leave a like to, subscribe to if you want.
Tell your friends and family.
Yeah. A little birdie told me that Jacob jumps up and down in joy every single time the like button is hit on a video. We also have a Ko-Fi page up, which currently doesn't have, it's just, if you want to donate. But we are going to be putting up a little thing that we filmed before recording this when one person on the couch who will not be named, whose name's Jacob, didn't show up on time.
No.
So if you want to see me, Josh, and Dalen playing Fortnite for like 12 minutes, go donate any amount of money on the Ko-Fi page. And also, hey Jacob, maybe you should donate to the page so you can see what you missed.
That's true, bro.
Enough stalling. Let's get to it. So... Kris's Undertale counterpart. So I feel like this is a big discussion, especially recently, actually, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it. So what is Kris's Undertale counterpart in Deltarune? Where, Toriel has Toriel from Undertale and Deltarune, and Asgore, and all the characters from Undertale seem to have been carried over into the Deltarune Light world in some form, and we just have this new character called Kris. And it's left a lot of people wondering, it's like, okay, do they have an Undertale counterpart? And who might that be? And it's probably one of these two, non-binary human children. So in this video, we're going to kind of talk about where I lean regarding that and all the evidence for and against both of these two freaks. Again, we're going to talk about, whether or not, which one of these two is Kris, or maybe none of them. But I have important news, because a lot of people, especially recently, have been very on the Frisk is Kris hype train, and to an extent, I get it. But in my research, I have found undeniable proof that it is absolutely impossible for Kris to be Frisk. Completely impossible for these two. So stay tuned for the rest of the video to find out what that evidence might be. So let's get into the first one. Is Kris Chara? I mean, yeah, I think so, kind of.
Next slide.
Video's over.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like this is kind of where I lie on this whole thing. I feel like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of going towards the idea that Kris is the Deltarune counterpart of Chara. So I guess let's talk a little bit more about why. So just like the basics, so they are the human child of the Dreemurr family, you know, Asgore Toriel, and is the sibling of Azrael Dreemurr. So they have that in common. They like knives and chocolate, you know, just two character building aspects of them. They both wear the same clothing, which is, you know, it's not as big of a deal because we know that the Dreemurrs dress all their kids kind of like this, but we know they both have, you know, sort of green shirt, the one yellow stripe, and the brown pants. So, you know, they wear the same thing. And they also both have red eyes. And there's some debate about this, about whether or not Chara has red eyes. I mean, we obviously see Kris with the red eye. And we're going to talk more about, is it actually Chara who has the red eye later? So just, you know, put a pin in that. They both have a propensity for pranking and creeping out people. Like, you know, we know that with Chara, and we also know, you know, Rudy talks about how Kris is like this creepy kid, like, who was always like, you know, pulling pranks on Noelle, like putting ketchup on their arm and like making it like, oh, look, it's blood, and scaring Noelle. So they both have like that in common, and especially both being described as kind of like creepy, like Chara's whole thing with like, oh, like do the creepy smile. That's just another like basic character trait. Both dislike or are uncomfortable with humans. Now, obviously, it's pretty clear with Chara with their whole thing where, you know, Azrael talks about, so yeah, they hated humanity. They just wanted to kill a bunch of humans probably. So that's pretty set in stone for Chara. But there's also a character trait that is associated with Kris, because we know when they go in the library. There's a book for How to Care for a Human, which I think we find out that Toriel actually like took that book out and returned it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a book for monsters on how to care for humans. There are photos of unfamiliar humans inside. You shut the book quickly. So clearly Kris is uncomfortable by seeing other humans, which is another carryover character trait from Chara. Again, like linking them with their both like dislike or being uncomfortable around humans. It'd be a shame to make her bury her child. So this is something that Susie says at the beginning of chapter 1 when they're like, I'm going to bite your face off and kill you. But then Susie's like, nah, you have a nice mom. It'd be a shame to make her bury your child. Which is what she had to do to Chara in Undertale. So that's pretty messed up. And this could just, you know, be a reference towards Undertale. Like, I don't think this is too like deep to look into. It is just a reference, but I think it is interesting that it's like, okay, in a scene with Kris, it is directly paralleling something that Toriel had to do with Chara involving Kris. Implication of being suicidal / having suicidal tendencies. Now, this is actually a link between the two that I feel like I don't see too many people discuss, but it actually is something that I feel like is worth noting that is, you know, a similarity between these two. And again, Chara, it's a lot more blatant. Like we get Azrael saying at the end of the True Pastors run, where it's like that they fell like into the underground for not a very happy reason, and also, you know, they go through with like ending their lives for like their plan to, you know, for Azrael to absorb Chara's soul and to go onto the surface. And we also know that in Toriel's house, all the like sharp edges on any of the stuff in the house have been like dulled.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So that also, I think, not necessarily. This could be not necessarily for that. It could just be, you know, play on Toriel being like this very overprotective like mother. That's something you probably would have maybe done anyway. But that is something you could read into with Chara. And then for Kris, again, it isn't as blatant, but there definitely is like the subtext there. I think particularly with Kris, and I think I mentioned this in the last video, with them, their whole thing with like ripping out their soul. I think while it's not like, it's definitely at least like a sort of an allegory or like metaphor for like self-harm, you know, especially with, you know, the whole like framing of it, especially in chapter 2, where the whole thing was like, again, like they, you know, disappear into the bathroom for a long time and turn the water on, and Toriel doesn't really know what's going on with them. So there's definitely, while again, it's less explicit as Chara, it's definitely there in a sort of allegorical, like weird way involving the themes. So I think that's an important connection between the two. Chapter 1's ending heavily mirrors the post-genocide run pacifist ending in Undertale. And I think this is probably the most like standout, like everybody notices this when they first play Deltarune, where the ending, where, you know, Kris rips out the soul and they brandish the knife, their eyes light up, is kind of a beat-for-beat recreation of the post-genocide pacifist ending in Undertale, where again, you're in this like sort of dimly lit blue room, and this, you know, non-binary freak child, they look towards the camera and their eye shines and glows red, and there's even a pie involved in both of them because we know Kris goes to eat the pie. So no matter what, whether or not Kris is Chara, this is directly calling back to the scene for whatever reason that Toby wants us to think of that. Two characters doing essentially the exact same thing. And the unused human sprite in Undertale. Do you guys know about this guy?
Nope.
So this is a sprite in Undertale, which I don't think we really know what its deal was. I think it's just called like unused human or unused human sprite in the files. And yeah, again, we don't really know what the purpose for it is. I think some people thought like, oh, maybe it's supposed to be for your reflection in waterfall when you're like walking and there's the puddles in the ground. But this sprite does look a lot like Kris. Like it has a whole, sort of a, darker complexion. It has the shade going over the eyes, same sort of colored stripes. And we know that this unused sprite might, again, have something to do with Chara, maybe an initial design for Chara, or, again, it's supposed to be maybe Chara before they become all a freaky corpse monster in the genocide run. So, again, we don't really know what this deal is, but it might have something to do with both Kris and Chara, so I think it's worth mentioning.
Chara after not surviving.
Potentially.
Cans.
Lastly, we have the important person shirt. Now, we talked about this in the newsletters, but there's a piece of Undertale merch. Well, we'll get into what merch it is for.
tobyfox merch.
tobyfox merch on the Fangamer store called the important person shirt, where they don't specify whose shirt it is, but a shirt that looks like this, which is a whole heck of a lot like both Kris and Chara's shirt. And it talks about, oh, this is for a beloved someone. Your love will become theirs. Theirs will become yours. Which, again, is very, genocide run, like love, Chara-y. But again, I think it is closer to Kris's shirt because it has the stripes on the arms, which I don't think we know that Chara has. But the really important part here is that in the related collections, the collection that this shirt is under, it is both Deltarune and Undertale, which is unlike any of the other stuff in the store. Which I think, to me, kind of implies, like, oh yeah, this is a shirt from a character both in Undertale and Deltarune, and I think if you want to take another step further, is like saying that, oh yeah, the character in the both games are the same character, because it's the same. It doesn't specify. It's like, oh, this could be a shirt worn by many people, Because it also very clearly isn't including like Asriel in this, because it's just the vibe isn't really there, and the shirt is also different, not the right stripes. So I think this is a pretty big piece. Again, merch isn't canon, stuff outside the game isn't canon, but it's like obviously this is trying to tell us stuff. So it's worth not like overlooking. So yeah, I find that interesting. And also, I just want to mention here. So this is I think earliest concept art we have for Kris here, and going up there with the other sprites that we got like a little while back. I think this was from like 2015, 16. Well, that's when it's from, not when we got it. And I just want to point out, like, it's very Chara. Like they literally have like the single line eyes, like that's Chara's whole thing. And I just want to point this out because I feel like whenever I look at this, like, yeah, this kind of looks like to me if tobyfox, after creating the character of Chara, was trying to make a sprite of the grown up or teenager version of that character. Again, especially with the eyes. But yeah, so that is all the evidence for Kris being Chara, and I feel like this is where I think a lot of the more like average people who maybe aren't as into it kind of stop. It's like, oh yeah, there's enough here to mean it's like, yeah, this seems like the parallel. It seems like what they're doing here. But there's a lot of people who really don't like this idea or have other ideas that conflict with this. So there's obviously people making counterpoints to it. And the next slide is criticisms of Kris equals Chara and why they make me mad. So I think a lot of the reasons why people, I think there are arguments that to be made that, yeah, this isn't the route that it's going. But I think there's a lot of evidence towards Kris being Chara, and the counter arguments I've seen, a lot of them, I feel like under scrutiny don't really hold up or are just kind of like stupid and just kind of seem to me like people really trying to make as many excuses why it can't be. But again, let's just get into it. So I think one that grinds my gears a little bit, one that annoys me, is people say that Chara's eyes aren't red and that it's actually Frisk opening their eyes after Chara possesses them. Because we never see Frisk open their eyes. Now, again, in the sprite, it is a dark brown, but it isn't red. But everyone associates Chara having red eyes because of, the post-genocide pacifist ending. And people have said, oh, because this isn't Chara, this is Frisk with Chara possessing their body. This is just Chara opening these little line eyes. And in fact, Frisk is the one who had red eyes the whole time, which means that Kris can't be Chara. And no, that's just not true. Look at the scene you're talking about. So in the scene, you can see, again, this is like the pacifist ending, where it's like Frisk laying in the bed. And not only is Chara's face replacing Frisk's face entirely, also the entire face shape and the hair and the everything is changed. I think the biggest thing to note is the hair, where again we see Frisk's hair goes like this, Chara's hair goes like this. That's just Chara's hair. So this isn't like Chara taking over Frisk's body. This is just Chara manifesting, Yeah. In a similar way to the other like post Geno passive sending, where you can clearly see that's the same shirt, same like everything.
Yeah.
That is just Chara there. So I don't see why you wouldn't assume it's the same thing here, which I think pretty handily confirms that Chara is the one with the red eyes. And, maybe Frisk does have red eyes if they ever open them, but again, we don't know that. And I think this is not good evidence to say these are Frisk's eyes.
Also the cheeks.
Yeah, the cheeks too. Again, it is literally Chara. The only thing that's different is that it does look like Chara retains Frisk's sort of like yellow complexion. Now, that could just be a lighting thing because it's like a darker scene. Or this maybe does confirm the idea that people say with Troopers, like, oh, how could Chara be Frisk? Because maybe Chara is just paler because of living in the underground for a long time, or being a reanimated corpse when we see them like this. So again, maybe they had a skin tone closer to a normal person. I say normal person, this is just a white person.
Chara's not a light skin from Atlanta.
But yeah, I think there are plenty of ways to explain why Chara's yellow now. But I think that's my argument. Like that's Chara's eyes. I think that it's silly to kind of say otherwise.
And like already said, this only appears after you do the genocide route.
Yeah.
Guess who you see in the genocide route? That's right, it's Barack Obama.
So the next one, Chris's hair and skin color don't match Chara and more closely match to Frisk. Now this is something I will give, where it's like, Kris does have the exact same hair color and skin color as Frisk. So that is something, again, you can explain like why, this Chara is paler than this Chara and how Kris, it could still be the same thing. Because again, I think at the end of the day, it is like a video game. And I think partially probably why Kris keeps those colors, if it isn't to bring a parallel to Frisk, because again, we're going to talk about Frisk being Kris later. But I think it could just be because, tobyfox made Frisk yellow for a reason, where I think he talks about this in an interview where it's like, oh yeah, it makes it look less like inherently human, so it's more easy to like, it just feel less weird juxtaposed against everything else, and also it stands against the backgrounds better, just being like a flat yellow rather than like a skin tone color. So I could just imagine it just being a case of Tobyfox, when making this new game, wanting to have the player character kind of look similar to the old one in a way where it's like, again, works for the same way. So I could see that being why they carry over the same colors. But again, I will say that is, definitely evidence towards, Frisk being Kris. But I think it's kind of superficial, especially when you consider it's still the same colors, just different like tones, But I think this leads into, again, this was a real argument I saw once. Again, no hate to whoever said it, but I heard it, and it was like, what are you talking about, man? Where they said that it is biologically impossible for Kris to be Chara. Again, citing the skin tone difference and the hair difference, meaning that, biologically it can't be the same because they're probably different races because the colors are different and their hair color is different. And, as everybody knows, hair color cannot change over time, especially going from a kid to a teenager. Definitely, I definitely personally didn't have very light brown hair that, turned into a darker, almost black hair.
My hair was green.
So again, I think specifically the person who I saw make this argument made the argument that it is as likely for Kris to be Sans as it is to be Chara. because it's biologically impossible for Chara to be Frisk. And again, I think at the end of the day, you gotta be like, this is a video game. I really doubt that like Tobyfox was really considering the races of these human characters and excluding one from the other. I just think the notion that it's like, oh yeah, Sans is just as likely as Chara because this one is like a lighter shade of this one. That's a
Sans went back in time with the DeLorean, and he's actually Kris after not surviving, but then he comes back.
Cans again, but with a K.
Cans theory.
Cans theory.
Which cans do you subscribe to?
Okay, so this one, plenty of kids like chocolate. So, let's talk about chocolate.
You have a whole chocolate
Oh my
side?
god.
Let's talk about chocolate and basic writing. So this is one that kind of bugs me. So I wrote a lot about it. So this is going to be less me, seeing my notes. I'm just going to read what I have written here. I feel like I'm pretty good regarding people who have, opposing views to mine, or just have certain takes about certain things, especially when it comes to more subjective things like writing.
Yeah.
But I think anyone who makes the argument that plenty of kids like chocolate, therefore Kris and Chara both liking chocolate doesn't matter. I think you're being ridiculous. Come on. It's like, okay, so, yeah, kids like chocolate, but to say these two humans who both clearly have, be liking chocolate as, a notable trait for them, especially in characters who don't get a lot of, standout traits for them, there's obviously something there. And it's no other child characters in any of the games, talk about how much they love chocolate.
Mhm.
Like this is just like a basic writing thing. like just because children implicitly like chocolate, it's it's clear that something there's a point being made here that both of these characters like chocolate, like to like characterize them. And if it doesn't matter, if they're just saying it like if tobyfox is just pointing out that Kris likes chocolate just because they're a kid and Chara likes chocolate just because they're a kid and it's no relation, then why even include the detail? It's like the whole argument was like, oh, like the book was like pointing out the curtains were blue, and everyone's like, oh, the curtains were just blue. It's not important. But it's like writing. It's not like you write things on accident. If you're gonna be writing something, you're writing it and pointing out something for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's like again, why make the connection if it's not meant to mean anything? It's like, okay, like for an example, if we find out Kris doesn't like soda, which is a specific trait we do find out about Frisk that isn't exactly uncommon, a kid not liking soda, but that's a specific trait about Frisk that we know. If Kris went ahead and said, I don't like soda, and I said, it's like, oh, that doesn't matter because kids are picky, and plenty of them probably don't like soda. Like, I'd be called an idiot. That's clear that they're pointing that out, that similarity out, to make a distinction that, okay, these characters have something in common or are the same character. Again, if Kris said they liked soda, everyone would be like, oh, I guess it's Frisk is Kris confirmed. But Kris liking chocolate was like, oh, all kids like chocolate. It doesn't mean anything.
That's right. And if you think that, and you're stupid, like and subscribe.
I just like to mention, like, the 8 hours of content you have on YouTube. This is the most mad and the most writing in a slide ever that has been on a fucking.
I just think it's just so like, again, it feels to me people trying to find like an issue where there isn't one. Kris likes chocolate, Chara likes chocolate. Both of those are two important things for the characters, so it's important that they both have it. It's like yeah, this character is just as likely to be Kris. Well, actually, no, biologically they can't be because they're too pale.
I know, I constructed it from scratch.
Okay,
Homunculus.
gaster.
Yeah.
Do you guys like chocolate?
Yeah, chocolate's pretty good.
I don't like it because I'm Frisk.
I don't like
Frisk,
chocolate.
Chara.
Who am I gonna be?
You could be
Jockington.
Nah, he's too cool.
be that one.
So let's go back to
The red fish.
Well, funny you say red fish. So all these similarities, it's actually a red herring, like the knife and the pie at the end of chapter 1.
Oh.
So let's do the little red herring tangent.
This is just writing class now. This is no
like,
longer
it's just-
Deltarune 101.
I realize, again, I think for these slides, I just copied like my notes, so I forgot to like format them like actual slides. So I'm like continuing off from sentences I like cut out of it. But it's like, yeah, it's like, again, it's just like saying that, oh yeah, all the Chara stuff, it's a red herring. It's totally about tricking us, and it's actually, it's just so dismissive of all the evidence there is for Chara. Like, and I feel like I'm riding really hard for Chara as Kris, and it's like, I do like it. I understand I'm sounding defensive here, but it's coming from both the place of who likes the idea of Kris being Chara, but also from just like, again, let's just be civil about this and like be like, let me just keep talking. So like it or not, there, like, no matter what your take on Kris is, there's a lot of overlap between them and Chara, whether or not that's intended to make you believe that the same character or not. So viewing all those like elements as red herrings, like I don't know, I feel like making this character clearly and directly parallel another and act in a way where it can make the audience like believe that those parallels are like meaningful, that they're the same character. Like I think it's more compelling to see those traits as having like meant something instead of it just the significance of being a lay epic troll moment to mislead people. Some people think Tobyfox is Scott Cawthon, and I feel like that's an insult to his skill as a writer.
Hey.
Look.
Hey, I'm gonna make it a FNAF one of these in the future.
Again, if this was a Scott Cawthon we're talking about, then yeah, all these parallels, I could believe like maybe this is just an accident or a misinput or trying to mislead you, because it's like, yeah, they have two purple guys who are both purple, and you're initially supposed to probably believe like, oh, this purple guy, that's the purple guy, because all the other purple guys were the same purple guy, but it's actually a different purple guy, you know? So it's like, FNAF's different. It's its own breed. We'll talk about that another
Who are
day.
your top 5 FNAF characters, Anthony?
Withered Bonnie, Nightmare Fredbear,
He's alright.
Spring Trap. Okay, wait, redo the bit. Chica, Toy Chica, Shadow Chica, Nightmare Chica.
Chica, Statue of Liberty.
Put it up on the screen. The Glendo doing the Macarena.
Yeah, I feel like Deltarune fans will question anything other than the stuff that like actually matters. Like the pie fake out in chapter 1. Like, again, whether or not you believe Kris is the knight, I'm still a little like, oh, are they? I don't know. But they're obviously planning something, because they plug in the TV between chapters, you know? So I think whatever they're doing, eating the pie, that's the cover up to whatever they were actually doing, and it's to not spoil the audience of what Kris was doing in the first place. So I think like I don't think we were ever supposed to take that all Kris did after brandishing a knife and doing a creepy smile and glowing red eyes was just eating a pie. I don't think we were ever supposed to take that at face value, and I think if you did, and then that's kind of silly. And again, if that does happen to be the case, and we actually find out that all Kris did after chapter 1 was eat a pie, then yeah, all this Chara stuff, I'll throw it out the window, because I guess it's just a lot of what I'm saying is based on my faith that tobyfox is a good writer and does things for a reason. And again, I feel like tobyfox has not given me a reason to doubt that yet. So I think, again, just dubbing it all as like, oh, it's actually a red herring, and it's actually to trick you to think it's Chara, so it's actually Frisk, but the parallels are supposed to be there.
Kris set up a red herring tutorial by eating the pie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But again, but then I think it's like, a lot of fans will be like, oh, that's not a red herring. That actually is Kris just ate a pie, and that's all they did. Long con, like making a character that is essentially the same character as another character. It's a red herring. It's actually.
Anthony, I remember realizing to know because like, damn, I want to.
It's talking too much.
I was like,
oh, holy shit!
I knew engagement would be waiting, so
I planned for this exact scenario.
Alright, so that's the red herring tangent. So so yeah, this is just my kind of conclusion here with Chara being Kris, where it's like ultimately, like while I find Kris being the parallel to Chara in Undertale very interesting, I'm not fully devout to it as opposed to what it might seem like. Like I could see it going in a different route, and I am totally fine with people believing the contrary. I just see a lot of people being very dismissive of the idea without, in my opinion, like enough to really justify how really, really confident people are that it can't possibly be true. I feel like people really think like, oh, if in the big year 2025 you still think Kris is Chara, you're stupid. You're not paying attention. When it's like, I just think I haven't been given any like really hard evidence to the contrary, other than maybe evidence for a different character. But I haven't seen anything that is like supposed to be like disproving Chara being Kris. That's really made me wane in the ideas. Like I think this is probably the route it's maybe gonna go. And also, I think the route that has the most narrative potential, you know. So yeah, that's all I have to say about Kris being Chara, but there's a certain little NB we still got to talk about revolving this whole who is Kris counterpart situation, and that is...
Woo!
Oh yeah!
So, is Kris Frisk?
No.
So,
And
why don't you tell me why then?
Because the opening parallel seems...
No, you can't. Get your own opinion.
I have notes here ordered in pros and cons here, because I feel like it was just easier to put it this way, because again, I feel like I have maybe more criticisms for this idea compared to the last one. Let's just get into it. So, start on the positives. The opening of Deltarune parallels several scenes with Toriel and Frisk, but now this time with Kris. So we see Toriel holding Kris's hand, walking to school, and then hugging them at the end, which is directly parallels those two exact same things happening in Undertale. So that's direct correlation there.
Holy shit! I'm looking at it side by side now.
I will mention a counter argument that I kind of have to this, where I think this goes with the. Also, I just want to mention, like we said before, skin and hair color match exactly between these two. So that's another plus for Frisk as Kris. But I think what all of these could also potentially mean. Now, I know I went on that whole big thing about red herrings before, but I do think, because we know for a fact, tobyfox has said the intention for the beginning of Deltarune was to make you think it's Undertale. It's like you get Undertale themes blaring. You're playing as this kid who again looks similar to this kid in both like color scheme wise and just like general character design wise. You're getting all these scenes that you see from Undertale, and you're getting to see again a above ground world where you see the school and the hedges and all the different stuff that we see from the true past setting. So I think Toby really, and again also all the UI is like Undertale's UI. So I think again Toby has outright said that he wants people to kind of lull people in thinking that, oh, this is Undertale again, and then kind of smack them over the head with like the Dark World stuff and all the UI changes, different things to be like, oh, this is something different, and not just like Undertale 2 or something like that. So I think the colors, that's something that's going to stick around for a while. So I think that's maybe less to do with all this, but I think specifically paralleling these scenes, that maybe is what it's for, again, for that whole lulling you into thinking it's Undertale, which again is very rich for me, going my whole complaint about red herrings. But again, this is one where we already have tobyfox saying what the intention of this scene was, so we can kind of gain conclusions of what certain trickery might be. Whereas if tobyfox, like, we heard him say that the end of chapter 1, he said was directly supposed to make you think it's the ending of the post-geno passive ending, but then it pulls the wool over your eyes and it's actually something different, then it'd be different. But again, we don't know the intention of that scene. We do know the intention of this scene. And I also think this could potentially be like, again, kind of tricking you to think like, oh, maybe this is Frisk because we get all this other stuff. And at the end, it's kind of, how we don't know who Ralsei is until the end, and then they reveal it's like, oh, this is someone who looks like Azrael but isn't Azrael. And then it's like we get all this Frisk Kris stuff at the beginning, and at the end they show the true colors in a scene directly mirroring something that Chara did. It's like, oh, now we actually know who this kid really is. But that's a lot of cons for the pros section, so let's move on to the cons section. So from what we know about Frisk, the personality just doesn't really match, in my opinion, to Kris. Both in the sort of 2016 like fandom mischaracterization, where they're this kind of like soft small being who could never hurt a fly, that kind of thing, and also the more nuanced and like accurate like modern takes that Frisk have been people have on Frisk, which I've seen gaining a lot of people have been latching onto recently. And a sort of gremlin child with pure determination who's just trying to see all the outcomes, kind of paralleling the player more. Again, we don't know a whole lot about Frisk. It's a lot of implied stuff. But I think even from the little that we have of Frisk, it just doesn't really feel like Kris, in my opinion, in the way that Chara kind of does. Especially we know of Kris in their younger years when again they were pulling pranks a lot and creeping people out and doing a lot of Chara-y things.
No, yeah, and they took all the monster candy bowl. That was fucked up.
Yeah, Frisk did that.
Yeah, it was fucked up.
Yeah.
Asshole.
Throw him in jail.
Yeah.
Kill him.
This one's evil. This one we don't know yet.
Firing squad.
The one on the right's kind of evil. The one on the left is pure evil.
I think Kris is misunderstood. This thing's a freak.
Yeah.
Frisk is lacking what I'd argue is one of the most important aspects that Kris and Chara share, which is that they're both they're both of them being the adopted human child of the Dreemurrs and Azrael's sibling. Where it's like, again, that's one thing that Frisk just does not have. They are, especially, they can technically get adopted by Toriel at the end of the pacifist run, but more specifically, Frisk is not the sibling of Azrael, which Kris is very importantly is. And that's something that also very important that Chara is. In fact, I'd argue arguably the most important part about Chara is that they are the sibling to Azrael Dreemurr, which is what Kris is doing. So and that's completely missing from Frisk. So I think that is important to know. And also, the photo in Sans' lab. Now, again, we all know about this, the photo with the crudely drawn people that says "Don't forget" on it, that's teasing Deltarune. But also, there's another photo we see where it says Sans, there's a photo album, also, cover all my bases again, this is the workshop behind, Sans Papyrus' house. You guys know it.
We're gonna see it next chapter.
Maybe, yeah. Watch the last video if you want to know why. Yeah, so we know there's a photo album in the drawer, and there are photos of Sans with a lot of people you don't recognize. He looks happy. So this is important to mention because, again, I think fandom consensus, and it's like, if it's not true, I don't know what else is true, that Sans is from Deltarune initially, and then he moves over to Undertale through some methods, probably some sort of machine here. Right. And so that means wherever Sans took this photo, it's with, it's probably in the Deltarune reality. And again, we know that the three crudely drawn people, it's probably Kris, Susie, and Ralsei, or maybe Noelle. It's complicated, could Sans even see Ralsei if he's not in a dark world? Whatever. But we know those are characters from Deltarune, and probably the Fun Gang. And we know that the people in this photo, I feel like I would hazard to guess, have to be also Deltarune characters, probably including the Fun Gang. Which means that if Frisk is Kris, and they see a photo that they say themselves, they don't recognize the people in the photo other than Sans, and they're in the photo.
Yeah, it'd be like, wait, that guy kind of looks like me.
Yeah, it looks like me, roughly 10 years in the future.
Yeah, it would have said one of the people looks like you or something.
Yeah, I feel like that's just sort of. I also don't see many people mentioning this. I think this is something I came to stumble on my own. It's like, oh yeah, if Frisk is Kris, and again, this is just based on the assumption that Kris would be in this photo, which we don't know, but I feel like if you ask most people who they think is in this photo, I feel like Kris is one of the most likely people to be in it. And so they can't not recognize themselves, You could also argue that maybe, Frisk sees Chara at the end of the genocide run. But also, we don't really know that Frisk sees that, because that could just be, you and the Chara and the player thing. And also, it's like, is that even canon? Or is like, how much, I don't know. That one's more complicated, but I feel like it's more set in stone, Frisk being in this photo, and that would contradict itself. And then, this is technically a pro, but I'm putting it as a con because a big thing that people always mention is that Frisk is an anagram of Kris. If you remove one of the letters, which is not how an anagram works, I have here, their middle name could be F.
Anthony, how dumb would you feel if I was like, oh, we found your birth certificate. It says Kris F and then Dreemurr.
Fogor Dreemurr. Then egg on my face.
Kris Finkel Dreemurr.
Anthony, you should promise your audience if you're wrong about any of this, you have to wear a dunce cap for like.
I'm not doing that.
You have to.
If Tobyfox looks at me in the eyes and tells me Frisk is an anagram of Kris, but you remove one of the letters, then I'll do the Stand Wrong song from Gravity Falls. But he has to directly tell me in my eyes.
For you, Tobyfox.
I have here that again. I think this is something that the Frisk Chrisers, which I don't have I don't have anything against these people. I just think
Fuckers.
I think it's funny to get angry about this stuff. But what's it called? This is not what they're gonna want to hear. But Kris being an anagram of Frisk unironically uses the same logic as Sans' Ness. Yeah, well again, it's the same logic where it's like, oh, Sans is an anagram of Ness if you change one of the letters. So yeah, I don't know if that's the backing you want for your theory, but I will say on this anagram thing, however, Frisk, Kris, and Pian. Now I have to admit, Frisk and Kris do sound similar. I probably mess it up like 3 different times in the video. So they definitely at least like sonically have a similar sort of sound to them. Granted, you could say like the at the start is kind of Chara. Then that also brings the whole idea of people. I'll just mention this right here because I feel like I'll be remiss to say it. People saying that Frisk and Kris are mixed together and they form Chara. And I think there's a lot of elements from both, so I can understand that. My question to you in the comments is how or why?
Wow. Yo, that fucking sprite in the bottom right, the middle, that shit always scares the shit out of me, bro.
The Goner clam?
Yeah, the Goner clam scares the shit out of me, bro.
We're going to talk about that in a second. So, see, I think there's definitely a connection between the names there. And also, I want to mention Pian, which, if you guys remember, that's on the Kris Dreemurr Kris posts on Noelle's blog, where they talk about, Kris coming over to play the piano at Noelle's house. It's like a symphony just for me. And the song that plays in Noelle's blog is called Pian, which is an anagram of pain, so that's another anagram thing. And it's also piano, but missing one letter. And it's related to Kris. So it's like, I remember, I think I was talking with Paul from work.
Paul from work.
I think we were just talking about some Deltarune stuff. And then I realized, I made this connection, it's like, man, I got everything wrong. Frisk is Kris. I like fully came around on it, and then I realized, like, wait, what am I even talking about? So I'm like using the faulty logic on one thing to a fault, but it's like,
wait, I hate golf.
wait, I hate golf. But I think if Frisk, Kris being an anagram, missing a letter, whatever, if that is significant, I think that would kind of explain why it's called Pian and not piano. Probably the part of Kris equals Frisk that I think leans me on the side to maybe agreeing with it on the most, where I think Kris being Frisk better parallels Frisk and Susie in Undertale. Now again, we all know this dialogue teasing Deltarune, where we see the clam girl, and she mentions her neighbor has a daughter named Susie, and that they feel like Susie and Frisk would be really good friends. And then mentioning, it's like, oh, so you never met my neighbor's daughter, but please don't despair because the time that you'll meet her is fast approaching, which happened in this, I think, the Switch release of Undertale, which is right when Deltarune was about to come out, so it was like basically teasing it right before it happened. So again, this whole kind of like Frisk and Susie in the Undertale universe, potentially being good friends and almost like fated to meet in some way, and teasing that the time they meet is fast approaching, and then we get Deltarune where we have Kris and Susie, but with the IE instead of a Y this time, which also maybe it's like maybe the names are different between Frisk and Kris because Susie's different. It's a whole other thing. Yeah, I think the parallel there I do think works better if Frisk is Kris. So I can like fully concede on that, and I think that there's definitely something to this. Also, I guess that's something I should point out. Like the whole thing's like, okay, how could any of these characters be the same if their names are all different? Where it's like, I think, again, you could explain some cross-universal shenanigans or whatever, but I think this is easier to explain in the Chara instance because we don't really know Chara's real name. Like again, the true name is sort of like a meta-narrative thing with the whole playing it like a video game and not like caring about the characters or whatever. So you name it's like naming your dog. It's Chara. You name your character. And it's also, main Chara is what the files are called for Frisk, so it's like, you just name it Chara. So, maybe the real canon name for Chara was just Kris the whole time, and it's the same character. But also, I'm a little hesitant on that, because we also do know that I think there's exactly one piece of concept art that we've gotten where it does have on the concept art the name Chara. So we know that that is something that, like, tobyfox does consider this the name, but I think it's in lieu of not having another name. But I think, I just figured I should throw that in there. And then also, I think there's this line with Kris's room, and also Kris's Dark World attire in general, where in their room that Ralsei makes them, it says you can wear whatever you want. And Kris's whole color scheme in the Dark World is very similar to Frisk's, like the blues and the pinks, and it's like all over the bed and stuff. And I think the implication of you can wear whatever you want is that, okay, what Kris normally wears maybe isn't what they want. Again, it's forced on them, you know, the Dreemurr clothing and the sort of like blue pink aesthetic. That's the way that Kris really wants to like express himself, which I think again does work better if Frisk is Kris rather than Chara. But okay, so we've made it, ladies and gentlemen, to the definitive proof why
Of why?
Kris can't be. Can you guys tell I made this last night?
Wait, did you even sleep last night?
No, I didn't
He
sleep
said
last
it.
night.
You just didn't sleep.
No.
Oh,
He's
wow.
working day in, day out for you guys. You guys better subscribe and give us all
on the
all
Kofi
the money.
Okay, so we got to lock in here because this is the definitive proof why Kris cannot be Frisk.
Okay.
So, Kris inarguably likes hot chocolate. That's something we know about Frisk. We also, you know, connected to Karen, but that doesn't matter for this. So, despite this, when you date Undyne in Undertale, she puts out a bunch of options to drink, and Frisk refers to the tea as the objectively correct option or the blatantly correct choice, meaning that Frisk likes tea, which is also important in the scene because that's how Undyne relates Frisk to Asgore and talks about how they're very similar in their whole like sort of, you know, being pacifistic, not wanting to hurt people. So that does imply that, okay, yeah, no matter what, like again, this is the option you need to progress the story, but it's also what Frisk personally prefers, which is important because hot chocolate is an option here. There's an option for Frisk to pick hot chocolate, and they say no because they like tea better, which means that Frisk cannot be Kris. Because we know that Kris likes hot chocolate.
But all kids like hot chocolate.
Wrong.
So, Kris's Frisk debunked. Again, this is something I've heard nobody talk about before. But again, when this is one of our only instances of getting like Frisk characterization, again, this is where we find out that they don't like soda. I think, again, it's stupid. But again, this is an opportunity, if these characters were the same, to show that they like the same thing. And it shows that they don't. So, yeah, that is my definitive proof that Frisk cannot be Kris. Are you guys impressed? Are you impressed? Can you at least lie and say yes?
Oh, I think you're talking to the viewers.
I am. I'm impressed.
I'm impressed.
I feel worse now. So.
No, what the hell?
And if you disagree, like the video.
Okay, so that is the last of the Kris versus Frisk debacle. But there is still one more slide. Well, there's a few more slides revolving Kris, but there's one more slide revolving on who their Undertale counterpart can be. And let's get right to it. You may be thinking, wait, but those are the only two humans we know about. Well, it's not true, because this theory is Kris the Cyan soul in Undertale? This one's pretty fun. I kind of like this one. So, Cyan soul, again, one of the I'd say 6, but 8 humans, if you could Frisk and Chara. One of the humans, children that fell into the underground in Undertale is, you know, the Cyan soul, which is Patience. Which the color of Patience matches exactly Kris's Dark World like color scheme. And also, their weapon is a knife. It's a toy knife, but it's still a knife. So that's another connection to Kris. And the Cyan soul trait it represents is Patience, which you could argue is something that Kris has. I would analyze a bunch of scenes where Kris has Patience, but do it on your own time.
Birdly, that's it.
What?
Just Birdly.
Yeah.
That's it, just say Birdly.
Kris
that's
does
it.
have Patience with Birdly.
That's it.
And also, if their soul is Cyan as opposed to red, it could create a greater distinction between the soul we use and Kris's actual soul. And
That'd be crazy.
this is, I think, pretty much it for Kris as the Cyan soul. I don't think this is the case, but I think the similarities are fun enough to point out. Now, before we move on to the next slide, I want to just ask, what's your guys' take? Like, if you were to say that Kris is a parallel to any like Undertale character, I guess it doesn't have to be human either, but probably one of the ones we talked about. Which one are you leaning more towards?
I think the Science World could be interesting, like because we are controlling Kris at the end of the day, so like it's tricky, you know.
I think it's the only thing is I think you miss out on a lot of narrative potential with this,
1000%.
where I think it's like having it either be Frisk or Chara. There's a lot more you can like, not even that you can do with that, but I think there's just a lot more, again, meta narratively that is more rich as opposed to a soul that we don't know anything about.
It is fun though to think of.
Yeah, I think it's fun, and again, I think it's like it's one of those things where like it all kind of lines up, but there's nothing like super
Yeah,
backing
yeah.
it, you know.
But it's definitely not the Kris equals Frisk, just like
You don't think so? Because I feel like the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I think there is a decent chance of it. I
Yeah.
just don't think it's as likely.
Yeah, it could be, but Kris equals Chara is definitely infinitely more
Yeah, right.
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Because
100%.
That,
Like,
that's also
Already been established, all the parallels, you know, from the literal colors of their clothing to
Yeah.
their backstory already. Like,
yeah, and that's also another thing where it's like I think Frisk is cool, but I think exploring more with them, I don't think there's a lot interesting to do with that. Well, I think there's interesting you could do with that, but I think it'd be kind of almost writing a new character, which is what Kris kind of is in the first place. But it parallels someone, I think, and I think it's way more interesting with Chara, someone who we've gotten both less and more characterizing, and I think just having Deltarune kind of being this like kind of expanded, getting to see characterization of Chara, what kind of like they probably would have been like if they hadn't gone through all the weird like messed up stuff in Undertale, got to grow up and become a teenager, and then have new problems like being controlled, which is probably why certain like character aspects people say like, oh, you know, Frisk isn't exactly personality wise the same as we would see Chara, but I think that could just be, you know, through different circumstances. They didn't throw themselves off a mountain, and they didn't, you know, have one of the most excruciating deaths possible, so they can give their brother their soul, so they can, you know, massacre a human town. So it's like they're different, but I think there's enough similarities there where it's like they're ostensibly they play the same role, and I think it's more interesting to see more about Chara.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
And also, it's one of those things where it's like, isn't it like Undertale Chara, like, because on the sidelines it's not very like malleable and like depending on your actions.
Yeah,
And
well, that's yeah.
I was gonna say it's one of those things where Kris is like, obviously they're not cool with being controlled and all this stuff and being like, they're not the same being like change and like,
Yeah, they have their own distinct personality that they don't want you, the player, changing.
exactly.
The only instances we get to see of Chara in Undertale is when they've lost their soul, you know.
Yeah.
And then arguably with like Nera Chara, you get more stuff. But then besides that, it is just, you know, at the end of the genocide run when they're filled with a bunch of like evil points and that they are on this crusade to like end everything, you know.
Yeah.
Where it's like I kind of like the demon that calls when you that comes when you call its name. That's different from like the Chara, like the human that fell into the underground, you know, before all this stuff happened.
Right.
So it's like it's almost a different character there. So I think it's interesting again if Kris is Chara, like getting to see more of like of what actually Chara would be like if they didn't, you know, become soulless and, you know, be influenced by whatever the player is doing through Frisk.
Mm-hmm.
JV, you have any thoughts?
No.
No.
Kris, Chara, I subscribe to that theory.
Yeah.
I mean, most damning.
Yeah. Again, I think it's just like it felt like kind of almost a consensus for like a while. Like I feel like everybody kind of agrees, like, yeah, that's probably what's going on. But then it was kind of weird because like they kind of assumed it's like, oh yeah, the same way that people didn't understand Chara's like, oh, they're evil and they're in chapter 2, they're gonna massacre everyone in hometown and you're gonna fight Sans and stuff like that. Where it's like, okay, I think with the more modern understanding of what Chara is and, you know, them being, you know, very flawed, not the greatest person, but still human and still like someone with emotions who had good parts about them, I think that equals out to a lot of what Kris is as well. Which again, they kind of get misunderstood in the same way, where it's like, oh, you know, people think they're this evil murdered person, or they're the knight and they're creating dark fountains. Just like again, all this like theories about is Kris evil? It kind of it's like poetry. It rhymes sort of with the whole you know, how Chara was treated initially in Undertale. And also, I just want to mention that I think, again, there's a lot of misunderstandings when people say, like, oh, Kris is this, that, the other thing, where I kind of want to make it clear that I don't think whatever Kris is, if they have the counterpart in Undertale, is ever going to be, like, directly confirmed, like, in Deltarune proper. Like, I think that's just something that's going to be implied through the narrative, and you can, you know, pull things from one or the other to characterize the other. But I don't think there's going to be a moment where Kris looks at their real birth certificate and see, like, again, like Kris F. Togor Dreemurr, and they find out that this actually is Kris. Or, like, the implication that it's like, oh, it's actually, Kris is actually, like, Frisk or Chara directly taken from Undertale into Deltarune. Like, I don't think that's the case. Again, I think it's a parallel and something that we're not actually going to get confirmed through the narrative, and it's just something that's implied. That is all the Kris parallel talk that we have for this video. But we're not done quite yet, because I want to make this kind of my comprehensive video on what my thoughts are on Kris before leading the next chapters when tobyfox Steam rolls it all. And I mentioned here that, again, maybe Kris is this color because their soul is the Pasian soul, which is the Cyan. But I, like, while this is a cool idea, I think I have a better reason why Kris turns blue.
Why are you blue?
oh my God!
Kris dies in an ice lake theory DLC.
We're bringing it back.
So this is DLC for the presentation where we're going to talk about what it says on the tin. Kris dies in an ice. Do you recognize this, Josh?
Yes.
So This is gonna be a fun. This one's for the audience to guess. This is a screenshot from my least favorite piece of media of all time. I hate what this is from every fiber of my being. And if you know what it is, that means you've suffered the same I have, and we're kindred spirits, you and I. So I'd like to see if anybody can guess that. I couldn't help but complaining about it. So if you want to get the secret to finding out what my least favorite piece of media is of all time and find out where the screenshot comes from, donate any amount of money on my Ko-Fi, and the video recording of me talking about it will be there. It's a hoot and a half. Let's get back on track, right? So this is an expansion of my original crack theory I came up with on my own from the very first video where I talked about Kris dies in an ice lake theory. Again, this was mostly entirely of my own noggin, right? But I will give credit to specific creators for specific findings that I didn't come to on my own. Which actually, a certain finding that someone else found was spurred the whole idea in my head. So I give them full marks for that. But so just to start off, as we talked about before, tobyfox often hides lore, even really important lore, in just completely random and innocuous places where you wouldn't expect it until you look back afterward to see it was foreshadowing. I think a good example is if you walk around in Alfie's lab, you go to the top floor, right? Which I think there's probably a subsect of people who've played Undertale who are big fans who doesn't even know that Alfie's lab has a second floor.
I did not know that shit. I did not know that shit at all.
You don't know about the bed that is scientifically made to turn into a square because it's easy to draw, and there's a joke about tobyfox didn't want to draw a bed. No? Okay,
I don't know about the second floor.
What's it called? So, on the second floor, there's a bunch of letters that Alfie's has strewn about, where it's a bunch of letters from different monsters, like some of the dogs, and I think I forget the specific ones, but very specific monsters. And when you read it, it's oh, I wonder what that's about. And then you find out later, it's oh, that was the people whose families gave the fallen down monsters to Alfie's, which made the amalgamates, and it's the people mailing Alfie's to know what's happening with their family, which we find out later. So it's oh, it's completely innocuous dialogue that you're gonna forget, that was sitting there the entire time, teeing up this huge reveal in the story.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, and so I think a notable time this happens. So a notable instance of this is Washua.
Lego.
It's an enemy in Undertale, obviously, and certain act commands with Washua directly, explicitly foreshadow Chara. And at this point, when we wouldn't even know that, the Dreemurrs had a human kid, and you'd read this dialogue and be I wonder what that's about. It's probably nothing specific. But let's read the dialogue here. So it's you tell a joke about two kids who played in a muddy flower garden. So obviously referring to Chara and Asriel playing in a muddy flower garden, And then next one, you tell a joke about a kid who ate pie with their bare hands. Again, probably also talking about Chara. And then you tell a joke about a kid who slept in the soil, which that's messed up. Again, I know, but yeah, that's referring to Chara's inevitable fate when they die and they get buried in the dirt. A kid who slept in the soil. So all this basically telling Chara's story and little vignettes of it is just in the trick dialogue from a random enemy that has nothing to do with Chara.
Look at him.
Just to show how much again, just tobyfox, we'll just put this anywhere, and then it's just it's on you when you replay it and you read it and you're so another creator on YouTube called Half-Bred Chaos, they went based on this specific check dialogue. They're I wonder if there's anything, because this is also pretty early on in Undertale. I wonder if there's anything just in random check or act dialogue in Deltarune that might be hinting towards future stuff that we wouldn't know the context of yet. And they came across certain act dialogue regarding Kris and the Swatchlings. A note that these aren't all the dialogue with Kris and the Swatchlings with the act commands, but these are just the most interesting ones. Where we have here, talked about the steam of fresh hot chocolate. Now, I yelled a lot about hot chocolate with Kris. We know Kris likes hot chocolate. It reminds them of Asriel because when, they would go to the diner after church with their family and get hot chocolate. And then after, Asgore and Toriel divorce, we know that Asriel still took Kris to the diner to get hot chocolate. And we know when they drink it now, they're reminded of their brother and their throat tightens. Mm-hmm. So clearly talking about Kris and Asriel. And then talked about the snow matted on your brother's nose. This is just more explicit. This is talking about an experience in the past where Kris saw snow matted on Asriel's nose. And then the last one we have here of the important ones, talked about the chill of the wind on an ice skating pond. So, considering the rest of these are kind of specific, this is kind of weird because it seems to be referencing something specific that we haven't seen yet or heard about yet. And both of these flavor texts seem to like detail Kara / Kris's childhood. Which again, if you believe that they're the same person, adds more to it. But no matter what, this is still talking about a human and their adopted sibling Azrael, or other way around. And so in Watchwa, the text refers to, again, Kara and their experiences they shared with their brother Azrael, and one piece of dialogue referring to their death. And the Swatchling, the text refers to Kris and their experiences they shared with their brother Azrael, and one referring to, I think Kris maybe fell in an ice lake and died.
They're dead.
Maybe feel in an ice lake? Oh my god.
Exalted.
Full circle. Again, like I said, compared to the other flavor text, the icy skating pond is pretty specific, given we don't know comparatively what the context is, compared to the other ones where we do know the context. There's already several allusions to Kris being dead in Deltarune that I feel like a lot of people have looked at and have kind of debated on whether or not this has significance, regarding, the way they walk after they pull out their soul being a zombie, which also could be, they're pulling out their soul, but also maybe something to do with them being dead. And also with dialogue potentially foreshadowing this. Again, we have this iconic piece of Susie dialogue at the beginning of chapter 2 where she says, well, look who it is, the school zombie. You were sleeping like a corpse all class. So 2 ways of referring to Kris as like dead, which again, this feels like a very Toby Fox, where if I was Toby Fox and I knew I wrote a character who died maybe in an ice lake, I would have a character say something like this. So when people replay the game, they're like, ooh, again, the same way, like tugging your collar, the same way with the Watchwa stuff, with a kid who slept in the soil. And also, when Kris looks at the shadow crystal alone in the light world, which turns into just like normal glass, I think, you looked through the glass. For some strange reason, for a brief moment, you thought you saw through your hand, which could potentially be, again, showing like, there's a big debate on like what the shadow crystals show. I think maybe just kind of vague, and it shows whatever cool thing Toby Fox wants to show you at that point. But again, this could be implying, again, they're seeing through their hand because they're not really alive. They're not like a real person. They're dead. They're dead, and they maybe fell in an ice lake or something. So let's talk about why I think specifically the ice lake is why they died. Because I think there's been a lot of talk about Kris dying in general. But I pitch it in this specific way because water is already very heavily associated with Deltarune and the Dark World specifically, with things like, the depths image and the Goner Maker and whatnot. But importantly, the audio that plays when Kris wakes up in a Dark World, wakes up in the first Dark World, when again they fall into the closet and you wake up in the area before the Card Kingdom, it's a sound called ocean.ogg. Like it plays for a bit and then hard cuts, you see Kris sitting there. And perhaps Kris is blue in the Dark World in reference to maybe hypothermia or, drowning, suffocating underwater. Both of those things maybe kind of make you blue. Or at least in fictional cartoon world, they'll make you blue. But if Kris died, and we assume it was while they were skating on like some sort of ice lake, where in Hometown could that be? It only makes sense that it would be the only lake we see in Hometown, which is this lake, which is where Onion-san is. And this lake is the very same lake where Onion-san said they heard something weird coming from the bottom of it, which I think is very interesting. Also, this was kind of like almost like a eureka moment for me, because I was not a eureka moment, but I was just like thinking like, okay, if Kris is skating on an ice lake and fell in it and died, right? It was like, but where's a lake in Hometown? Oh, there's a lake. Oh, and that lake has. And now let's get into what's the deal with the lake. Mm-hmm. So, press the wrong way. So Onion-san says that he hears some sort of song coming from the bottom of the lake, and he even specifically phrases that as a song coming from the sea, and the same song from the sea is also referenced by the river person in Undertale. Did you ever hear that old song coming from the sea? Which also is the only person in like Undertale, like not including like fun events, who makes an allusion to Gaster. Where they say, "Beware the man who speaks in hands." Like iconic line. All the fan songs are based off of it, whatever. So yeah, this character mentioning this thing, who also is one of the only people who talk about Gaster in the base game. So clearly, whatever the song is, probably has something Gastery going on. And considering we already know Gaster has something to do with the bunker at the bottom of Hometown, sped up 6666 times or whatever, it plays Gaster sound. Could maybe the bunker like run throughout like the entirety of like the underground of Hometown? I feel like that's assumingly whatever the bunker is, it's gonna be a big like wide open space. So I could definitely imagine, and it feels very like I don't know, like and like creepy thing. I was like, oh yeah, under like all the Hometown stuff, it's just this bunker like running through all of it, which means it could potentially run under where the lake is, where Onion Sun is. Which, especially because it's a lake, it's going to be lower down, so it's going to be closer to wherever the bunker is underground. So again, and it runs where Onion Sun could hear it, and if so, it gives a way for Gaster to be involved in whatever happens to Kris if they fall into this lake. Which I remember that this is part of my theory last time where I was like saying like, okay, Kris falls in the lake, and then some mysterious second step, and then Gaster gets involved. And my excuse was, I guess Gaster just did it because I didn't have a really good reason, but I was like, he's, you know, an enigmatic figure, he's my best guess. But now, there's a natural connection to, okay, Gaster actually has a reason for to be involved in this whole situation, which also lines up with the fact that we know that Kris has some sort of trauma related to the bunker and Gaster by proxy. So perhaps when Kris fell into the lake and died or whatever, Gaster was able to connect to them in some way and revive Kris. And after doing so, maybe began to test controlling Kris, like using their soul, or using the soul they put in them, the semantics, before eventually connecting with us, the player, and relinquishing that control to us. And I say this, that again, Gaster, again, revives Kris and then starts controlling them and doing weird stuff with us to test if it would work, because we know for a fact that Kris has shown signs of being possessed before we, like, ourselves got control of them. Given the fact that the cage that they throw the soul in says that it's seen quite a few crashes. And again, Toriel's dialogue that I feel like we keep coming back to, where when they're in the bathroom for a long time, Toriel says that, oh, Kris does this sometimes. Which means, okay, there was evidence that Kris is being controlled before we got control of him, so who could be doing that? Maybe Gaster, especially because he is assumedly the one who gives us control of Kris, or maybe he's trying to give us control of the vessel, and then the second voice or whatever in the opening that has like a different like typeface value or whatever, that they give us Kris, but it all is connected to the Gaster stuff. So I think maybe this is where that kind of connection gets started, and it has to do with the Ice Lake. So just in summation,
that was a really good slide. Now, like, I was like, wait, he's kind of cooking.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, in summation, in the basic terms, without bringing in all the evidence, my theory is that at some point Kris was skating on the lake in hometown. At some point when it was frozen over, maybe at some point in December.
Oh my god!
Oh shit!
No!
Okay, so yeah, so at some point when the
Bunch of fucking monkeys.
at some point when the lake, dude, that reminds me, I gotta talk about Screaming Ape Theory.
Fucking with us.
Only kind of. Screaming Ape Theory is basically a joke where people made like this fake image talking to us like, oh, this confirms everything. It's a bunch of like random slides where it's like Sans like I pooped my pants. It's like arrows and stuff, and then it's like this is the image of Kris and then a screaming like monkey, and then there's an arrow called Screaming Ape Theory confirmed. And it's the thing that people keep on saying on like Twitter now, where it's like, oh, this has big ramifications for Screaming Ape Theory, and the people who don't know, they're like, what's Screaming Ape Theory? Like these Deltarune, they've gone off the rails. So I think Kris skating on the lake in hometown where Onion Sun is, that was frozen over at some point in winter of no specified month, and then at some point fell into the ice lake. The bunker is not just a small bunker, it runs throughout the entirety of the town, throughout the entirety of the underground hometown, and through this, Gaster is able to connect to Kris when they fall in the lake. Gaster is then able to bring Kris back to life, but now has the ability to control them, and tests doing so for a little while before eventually giving the player control, because we're his best friend, again, or the second voice, whichever, take your pick. At the very least, Gaster is involved in whatever is controlling Kris before we get it. And also, just to clarify, I do think Kris is still, like, alive, technically. Like, they still have their own personality, thoughts, like, desires, likes, dislikes. They're still, like, conscious, you know? They're not a husk. Mm-hmm. But it's, like, it's less that Kris died. It's like they died, and then they came back, but they're still, like, kind of a zombie. But they still have, like, you know, their brain.
Reanimated.
And just to clarify, no, I don't actually 100% believe this theory. I just think there's enough stuff that lines up together where it's like, I think it's like the basic idea comes from just a random piece of dialogue that may or may not be like important, but I think there's a bunch of supporting evidence of like weird stuff going on where it's like, even if specifically Kris does not die in an ice lake, I think all the stuff I brought up is going to culminate together in something involving Kris that we're going to find out later. You know, where maybe not every piece of evidence lines up with it, but I think I kind of dug up a little bit of something here. Like dug up like a bunker. You know, what?
From an ice lake?
Dug up a corpse of a non-binary child from an ice lake. So yeah, that is the end of the slide. I also just want to mention this art here I used in the second thumbnail video. I just thought it was fitting here, and I guess I also want to mention if you like this art or any of the other art we have shown in the videos, you can go to my Ko-Fi page and you can commission me for art. Just figure I'd throw it out there. But
I knew it.
you.
Oh, I don't know why it's like they should have found an F and hit it there or something.
It says Kris. Like,
So this is Frisk.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
So yeah, thank you guys for listening to me ramble about Kris for a while. Again, there's a lot to talk about with them. Again, there's probably even more we could talk about, but I think just specifically their parallel in Undertale and again Kris dying in an ice lake were the two things that interested me the most about Kris, and why I wanted to get it out there again before chapter 3 and 4 steamroll me like a steamroller to a TV. So I want to thank you guys for all watching. Do any of you guys on the couch and chair have any final thoughts about all this?
tobyfox is gonna upload a video tomorrow, and he's gonna confirm that
Wait.
Frisk is Kris.
I just got a newsletter. He told me to kill yourself, Anthony.
Oh my god.
I think the last part with Kris being dead, or the dialogue, that's a red herring, bro.
It's a red herring.
It's a
Green
blue
herring.
herring.
All kids die in ice.
I died in ice lake, and I'm fine. Like, so no gaster got control of me. Like, come on.
All kids die in ice. Like, come on, bro.
Everybody died. I died twice. I'm just a thug like that. Like,
Oh man.
Thank you for watching. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the video if you subscribed it. Comment on the video because I like reading the comments. Thank you guys. And yeah.
Remember, Jacob does a dance every time you guys like.
No,
He
I
does a
don't.
dance.
No, I don't.
what do you think,